Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Axient's virtual Lunch and Learn today, value-based go-to-market Office 365 backup. We look forward to having you all here with us today. We're going to go ahead and just give everyone a couple more minutes to take their virtual seats, and then we'll go ahead and get things started. Looks like we have a lot more people joining, which is great. I do want to point out as well that we want to keep this interactive, so please feel free to ask us questions throughout the presentation under the questions tab, as well as chat with us and other people on here attending as well, and we will make sure to answer all of your questions throughout the presentation. So we'll go ahead and just give everyone a couple more minutes. All right, well, thanks again, everyone, for attending our virtual Lunch and Learn today. Just want to point out one more time, we do want to keep this interactive, so please feel free to ask us questions under the questions tab, as well as chat with us throughout the presentation. And David and I will be moderating all of your questions that come through, and we will make sure all of those get answered. So I'll go ahead and kick things over to Angus.
Great, thank you, Olivia, and welcome everybody. Really happy to have you here today. As Olivia said, we're going to talk about go-to-market with Office 365, and in particular, how to protect your clients who are using Office 365 or Microsoft 365. Very happy to have one of our partners here today, Dan Baer from CardsTech. He's CTO there. From an agenda standpoint, we'll talk about some market trends and some opportunity relative to those market trends. We'll then go through some of the details and opportunities and best practices around Office 365 backup. We'll talk about our platform, Axient X360. You can see a screenshot of the portal in the laptop to the right, but our core value proposition there is that we have one platform and one experience for three core backup services: BCDR, SaaS protection or cloud-to-cloud backup, and secure sync and share. Then we'll end with some key takeaways and next steps. We'll also have, I think, 3 polls throughout the presentation, so be ready for those. And as you take those interactive polls, we'll make sure to read out the results from them. As Olivia said, I do believe we have a giveaway at the end, so make sure to stay on till the end to get that chance to win the Amazon gift card. You have a fairly good chance to win that. All right, my name is Angus Robertson. I'm CRO here at Axient. I've been at Axient a little over 2 years. I'm responsible for sales, marketing, and partner success here. We have a dedicated partner success team. And I've been in the industry for more than 20 years. I started off as a programmer and in IT, running different systems and networks, and then had a lot of time in telecom, about 14 years in various product roles in telecom. Spent some time also in enterprise software, and finally, very excited to be part of the MSP community. One of the communities I'm really excited to be part of is CompTIA. I'm a co-chair of one of the advisory councils, and I'm on that advisory council with folks from Kaseya, ConnectWise, Compliancy Group, Bitdefender, Ninja. So it's a really good group, but really appreciate the community of the MSP and how we share best practices and also learn from one another. On the next slide, we'll introduce Dan, but in the meantime, I'll hand it over to David to do a brief introduction. He's an account executive that is responsible for the region we have on the call today. David.
Yeah, hey everybody. So my name is David James. I am, as Angus mentioned, an account executive here at Axient. I've been with the company for coming up on 2 years now. Primarily focused in the West and Midwest. And I've actually probably spoken to some, if not all of you. So it's nice to, I always like to put a face behind the keyboard here. Fun fact here is I'm a pretty avid disc golfer. So Frisbee golf, we have a lot of good courses here in Colorado. And as of, I think 2 weeks ago, I now have 3 disc golf hole-in-ones. So that's what I got going for me here. I will, along with Olivia, be answering questions and whatnot in the chat. So feel free to ask away throughout the presentation.
Great. Thank you, David. With that, Dan, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and also a little bit about the business where you're CTO, Cards Technologies.
Sure. So Cards Technology, we were founded in the year 2000, started out as a repair shop doing mostly residential work. And then our geographical area is highly a resort area. And we have a lot of businesses that are year round, and we identified that there was a big need for technology support for those organizations. So we quickly shifted our focus to what we now call MSP, but at that time it was kind of before that trend had really taken root. So we've been doing that, for about 20 years now. We opened up our office in Ocean Pines. This is also when we made our big shift to MSP back in 2007. So we've been around for quite some time on both sides of the aisle. But at this point, we focus most of our service delivery around cloud productivity, communication, cybersecurity, both from a solution and a practice, but also in education. And then we also focus heavily on infrastructure services, including security, phone services, and infrastructure and network cabling. So we kind of do a little bit of everything, jack of all trades and the master of all of them. So everyone remember that. So glad to be here.
Master of all, for sure. And I know perhaps infrastructure services or voice or even phone is perhaps not the most exciting thing to talk about, but it certainly helps with the stickiness of your offerings. I know a lot of MSPs don't provide that kind of infrastructure services necessarily, but do you find that those infrastructure services are actually a differentiator and help with client retention and then or cross-sell when you start to focus on some of the higher value, more growth areas such as cybersecurity and cloud?
Yeah, we like to engage with our clients and tell them basically at the beginning of the conversation, we want to be your one throat to choke. If you need something and it's IT related, we want to try to satisfy that for you. Even if it's to the point of we're just a liaison to your vendor, at least you only have one person to call. So the two dreaded P's of phones and printers are something that we definitely are heavily involved in, and we do as a managed service for our clients. But that is definitely part of the stickiness. And again, giving them one person to call when there's a problem with anything IT related is huge, but it takes a lot of tact.
Right. And do you see some of those services such as managed print and phone, has that dynamic changed at all? Do you expect all of the clients that you supported in an office to return to their office, or do you see a number who will prioritize working from home or working in a distributed type workforce?
It's an interesting one because I think it's very dependent on which vertical we're talking about, because obviously, manufacturing gets a little difficult to do remotely. But we are seeing a huge shift with a lot of our clients that were vehemently against anything remote to all of a sudden being thrust into this new world that we are in, where we really didn't have a choice if we wanted to keep up the business running and productivity. So there's definitely going to be a shift in a lot of the services offering for sure. Cloud is obviously at the forefront of all of that. So managed print and phone, definitely going to have to adapt as we see how things pan out over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you say about how it is vertical specific. For example, manufacturing, you're still going to have that manufacturing floor, so there's only so much you can do there, but perhaps more on the professional services type verticals, whether it's legal or financial, or even some telemedicine, right? On the healthcare side, there is opportunity for some of that remote work. I know one of our partners in the Southeast supports a lot of legal offices, and before the pandemic and what we're dealing with, those law offices felt very strongly about everybody working in the office, and now they're seeing that a lot of their employees can be productive remote and they can save money on office space. So I think, as you point out, it's going to vary by vertical. Are you seeing that on the professional services side, what are some of the key verticals that you focus on?
Healthcare is definitely one that I think has ballooned over the past, especially 6 months, or really the past couple of years, with compliance being a huge driver of most of the decisions that they make. So healthcare, legal, and even I think back office type works like hospitality back offices, accounting firms, just really anything that they're really having to evaluate whether being in the public face is even necessary to continue operations. And just like you saying, if they're finding that there's a strike in productivity or a strike in expenses, but an increase in productivity pretty much across the board, if you can have a way to do your work remotely and you were able to achieve that, you found that you were cutting expenses in other areas, and most of the time your revenue stream just gets a lot stronger.
Yeah, it's interesting how some businesses are fundamentally changing and thinking about how what was a core strategy before is not necessarily as core now. I was reading online an article about companies like Chipotle doing a lot more drive-through, or some of the healthcare companies focusing a lot more on telemedicine and considering that more of a permanent state going forward, and companies like Lowe's really accelerating some of their cloud services offerings and pickup and delivery offerings. So it is interesting. Some of these changes look like they are here to stay. So speaking about cloud services, it's good that we are managed services and that we are IT and information, and the digital age is one of the ways that we are able to weather the challenging environment that we're in right now. And you can see here, even post-COVID, that Markets, an industry analyst firm, is predicting that cloud services, especially managed services, will continue to grow from around 60 billion in 2020 to more than 100 billion by 2025. So still a significant growth rate of more than 13% over the next 5 years. And what I can share here is some early data. This research isn't quite published yet. This is some surveys that we did within CompTIA as part of the Business Applications and Advisory Council. So the Business Application Advisory Council is one of 7 councils, industry councils within CompTIA, that focuses on driving awareness of new technology and adoption of new technology. So we're one of the more pedestrian councils focusing on cloud services, but there are some of the other 7 councils include AI, blockchain, and IoT, for example. But those readouts and that data from all those different councils are available if you're a CompTIA member. But something that is interesting here is just a readout of this slide shows that the estimated percent of revenue from cloud services today, there were just over 80 solution providers that were interviewed in this survey and a little more than 40 SaaS vendors. So you can see, not surprisingly, that most of the vendors, the green bars, get most of their revenue from SaaS. So more than 50% of the vendors get more than 50% of their revenue from SaaS. Now, we can see we're not quite at the tipping point there on the solution provider side. So from an MSP standpoint, the majority of MSPs are still not getting the majority of their revenue from cloud services. Now, when I talk to some of our partners, they do talk about a lot of their fastest growing services are either cloud or security or a combination, and there's a fair amount of growth on the Azure side as well. And Dan, when you look at your own portfolio, I know that you do a fair amount of cloud and security. Where do you see a lot of the growth in your portfolio this year, and where are you investing more?
So we're taking a pretty aggressive look at how we're structuring some of our agreements with our clients, because with the landscape changing, the idea of having a large professional service project, every 3 to 5 years per client could very much rapidly be changing with their workforce being more distributed. The idea of the traditional office model might not necessarily be around much longer. So we're reevaluating some of our agreements and really taking a look at what we can do, not as an added revenue stream to that, but what can we do to reinforce that. So kind of reaching back to some of the days of the value-added reseller where you sold a product and you tacked on some services to kind of make it better. We're kind of taking that same approach when it comes to cloud services. Maybe not doing a big cloud project every year, but what if we're going to do a big cloud project every quarter per client and just reinforce their agreement, raise the price a little bit to see what we can deliver with that. So we're throwing some number around and trying to figure that out, but really just riding the wave of the cloud. Everyone had to adopt it pretty quickly if they weren't already, and everyone had to adopt it even more if they were really just kind of putting their foot in the door. So really trying to leverage the position of our clients and where they're at and position our agreements to be, resilient in that big drastic change. Because before we almost looked at it as a loss of revenue, but at this point we're looking at it as more of an opportunity to make our agreements a whole lot more mature and deliver a lot more value to our clients that they can see on a quarterly or even monthly basis. Taking advantage of the changes that Microsoft wants to put out, taking advantage of the additional security features they have with some elevated licensing, and just really trying to educate the client on how to use it and putting it in front of them to be able to use it.
That's a really interesting strategy because it's always less expensive to keep an existing client than find a new one, especially now that that's more important. So if you can go to your existing clients and look at their existing spend and potentially reconfigure that spend more around their new reality and the cloud services they need to support, for example, a distributed workforce, and then also look at strategically how they're trying to optimize or retool their business to be more competitive in this environment, that could lead to those quarterly cloud engagements that are more strategic. Did I understand that properly, Dan?
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, that's cool. So here you can see that from a managed service provider standpoint, business continuity and cloud security top the list, and orchestration and integration are also very important. I thought from a growth standpoint, what's interesting, we're seeing a lot more infrastructure as a service. So, hosting workloads in cloud service like Azure, that's where a lot of MSPs see the growth this year post-COVID, because this research was done very recently in the last month or so. And one of the things here, this shows in the blue and the green, both solution provider answers. And solution providers here are describing where they saw moderate growth or flat revenue for cloud services in 2020, pre and post-COVID. So you can see in the blue what it was pre, and then in the green what it is post. And I think what's interesting is how the growth has changed. And this is something that you observed, Dan, just some of the areas where there was a little bit more growth, and also perhaps that it's vertical focus. Any thoughts on what this graph might show or some insights here?
So it definitely goes back to the vertical specifics, because certain verticals will obviously be leveraging certain technologies a little differently now. I think the one thing that we kind of recognized pretty early on, and granted, we had a pretty staunch stance on how our clients were leveraging Office 365, Microsoft 365, Intune, and all the cloud application and security features. We had a pretty high percentage of adoption, and we're shooting for 100% adoption at some point later this year, and really discussing what the journey to the cloud looks like for all of our clients. But the reality is, and a lot of MSPs, I don't think were really thinking about this before, and as we can see from the shift in what these percentages are really telling us, a lot of people expected to see moderate growth, and then that dropped and then became distributed from between significant and flat, and then even an increase across decline and significant decline. The reality is your clients are going to be leveraging cloud services more, whether you're the one providing it or not. And as the MSP, you want to have control, or you want to have at least a talk in the management aspect of those cloud services and be able to help your client leverage them to the best that they possibly can. So whether you're offering it or not, your clients are going to start using it, and we definitely want to get ahead of that curve before the clients start adopting things that could pose a security risk. So that huge thing to think about from an MSP perspective. So, really, cloud services are an opportunity for MSPs to change their revenue stream if you're not already adopting them or you're not already working them into your agreements or having those conversations with your clients. So, to see the split from moderate down or to flat and then up to significant is an interesting spread, because I think a lot of MSPs were advantageous, and then some of them saw even more opportunity than they foresaw before just by looking at these numbers.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, here we come to our first poll. So with this first poll, we want to ask you, from your standpoint, do you expect cloud services for your business to grow this year, now that we know a little bit more about what this year looks like and we're about halfway through the year? So Dan, while our attendees are answering that poll, I thought you said something interesting in your insight and observations on that last slide. You talked about getting ahead of some of the cloud services that any one of your clients might deploy and some of the security ramifications around that. Do you have any examples of that or any strategies on how you're managing that?
So we have kind of gone introspective, and we're developing a position that we call client success. And part of that position goal is to develop what a journey to the cloud looks like. And not just the overall journey to the cloud, but a journey to the cloud for every client that isn't leveraging cloud technologies or could be leveraging it more. So for us, having that conversation with the client and working with them in that direction is really going to set the stage for our growth for cloud services revenue, both from a warm lead perspective of, we have clients that are already using it and what can we sell them more, and then actually laying out that foundation for the conversation with clients that really haven't thought about it up to this point. Because the one thing the pandemic did for everyone was made them think differently. So if they've been stuck in a rut for so many years and we've been telling them that really need to be moving in this direction, now all of a sudden they're actually thinking in that way instead of just resisting. So laying out that journey to the cloud very clearly and specifically for each client is going to be key, and that's definitely going to navigate what the implementation looks like for them.
Yeah, it's interesting how internal and external events drive changes in behavior for clients, right? So obviously, this is a global-wide event that is dramatically changing behavior. So we had most folks answer the poll right now, and everybody said that cloud services is going to grow in 2020. So it's great to see that in 2020, given everything that's going on, we can still be optimistic about areas for growth and to provide value to our clients. And that's reinforced by some other research provided by TechIsle here. So TechIsle said that in terms of the overall spend on IT in 2020, original projections were more than 5% growth this year, but even post-COVID, they're expecting between 1% and 4% growth. And I saw a recent report from Gartner that was slightly negative, and I saw a recent report from CompTIA that was neutral. So it's somewhere in that realm, but overall IT spend is in the trillions, so there's plenty to work with within that. And this research highlights that in that almost 80% of SMBs are prioritizing that digital transformation. And a lot of that has to do with moving to the cloud for that anywhere access and always on type productivity. Then another more than 70% of SMBs are actually unprepared for cybersecurity and disaster recovery. So there's still obviously quite a significant threat around security, and a lot of managed service providers that I talk to are either doubling down or investing more, not only in their cloud services, but their managed security offering, or they're launching a new managed security offering with some kind of compliance support. So those are certainly two trends that we're seeing growth around. And on this next slide, just to highlight some of the growth around cloud services, we can take an example here, which is Microsoft Office 365 growth. You can see from November 2015 all the way through their most recent reporting, which I believe was April of 2020. And you can see a steady incline in cloud services adoption. So these are commercial cloud services users. So in November of 2015, there's about 60 million commercial Office 365 users. And by the end of last year, in November of last year, they were at just about 200 commercial Microsoft 365 users. So in the last quarter, January through March, they've managed to add 50 million. So that's a pretty dramatic spike that we saw in just one quarter, as reported by Microsoft in their latest earnings report. And Dan, is that something that you're also seeing? Have you seen, I think we've all seen growth on the team side, but you're seeing growth beyond Teams with Microsoft 365 in general?
Absolutely. Moving away from the business class licensing and moving towards the enterprise class licensing and leveraging the Microsoft 365 E5 and E3 SKUs has been a pretty big shift for us even before the pandemic, and now definitely seeing not just a need for it, but a request for it. People want more insight, they want more security, they want more peace of mind, and ultimately you're only going to get that if you pay more for it. So we've definitely seen both an increase in adaptation of Microsoft 365 in general, but then also an uptick in just escalating to that next license and integrating those services for them.
Got it. And this is what we've been talking about for quite some time, where we've had quite a lot of, obviously, we've moved from this on-premise scenario, which was fairly monolithic, where you had that headquarters, you had people coming into work, working at that office, and then there was a firewall and then access to the internet. Now we've moved to a much more complex and distributed type environment where you have on-premise workloads, you have virtualized workloads, you have workloads that are in cloud virtualized, you have applications that are software as a service in different clouds, you have people not only working in an office, but working in a remote office or working in their homes. And then you have all the different types of connections, either over VPN or some other kind of secure connection going to any one of those clouds or even different offices. So it's a much more dynamic environment. And of course, as we talked about earlier with this event, with this pandemic, we're seeing a much faster move to this new world. And not only do we have more complexity and more variables to deal with in terms of what applications they use in the cloud, what applications are hosted on premise or hosted in a private data center or a public cloud, but we also have a lot of BYOD type devices and of course a lot more connections to deal with and the security ramifications around all those different connections and how people are using devices and the applications. And Dan, in another conversation, you said something that I thought was really interesting, where there's a big difference in terms of how you had that firewall as sort of your one ingress egress point that you could really control the security around, and now that's changed. And you talked about a shift to a greater focus on endpoint security. Did I get that right? Any other observations or thoughts there in terms of how you think about it?
That is, you hit the nail right on the head. There's a huge shift from perimeter security to endpoint security. And not only that, but identity management has now become the forefront of your security stack. If you can secure the identity of your user, you can guarantee a much more higher level of security overall. And not only that, but identity management also stems to single sign-on and federation. If you can get your clients moved to cloud-based applications and integrate their Office 365 identity with that, and you can create a true single sign-on scenario, you have not only increased their productivity, but you made them very happy people, because they don't have to remember multiple passwords and use the same password across multiple accounts. You've increased their security posture substantially. So huge shift to identity management as a primary focus, and even Microsoft has written tons of knowledge base articles on identity management and that being the core focus. And we're seeing some big strides in their passwordless authentication to even further that. But even more so, we're also can't ignore the fact that the human firewall is now more important. because your physical firewall may not be in play for most of your workforce any longer. The traditional idea of having everyone come to the office and they're physically sitting behind that firewall where all your security is kind of centered around, it's really gone. And even before the pandemic, we were kind of faced with an interesting scenario when it comes to our workforce, with certain generations coming down the pipe and entering into the workforce. There was a shift. They were expecting to be able to work anytime and anywhere, and now all of a sudden everyone was forced to be able to do that. So we're kind of, it's working to our advantage to kind of leverage that new workforce, that new generation of what their expectations were, and now we're able to meet that or even exceed it in a lot of scenarios. So kind of a working our favor from the MSPs, especially some of our older hats in the audience who are trying to figure out what they were going to do with that next generation. Well, now you kind of don't have to worry about it as much because you're able to deliver exactly what they were expecting to begin with.
And Dan, do you have any clients that are still doing on-premise Exchange, or has everybody moved, or the majority moved to the cloud?
Happy to say I have no on-premise Exchange and haven't for quite some time. It's Microsoft made some interesting moves right before the big shift in the adaptation of M365, back when it was really just Office 365 for apps and Exchange Online, where they were changing their licensing SKU and kind of making it a little too expensive to have an on-prem Exchange server, and really incentivizing moving to Exchange Online. And so we kind of jumped on that bandwagon, and we really didn't install any more Exchange servers pretty much for that fact. And we just saw clients, aside, once they got over the immediate response they were always getting from their Exchange server, and really got used to the idea of, I can access this from anywhere, it's redundant, it's resilient, and it's a service that I can pretty much always rely on 99.99999% of the time, they really didn't even notice the difference, aside from it just being more accessible. Yeah.
Wow. So as many of you are aware, in the Microsoft Services Agreement, Microsoft actually spells out that they're not liable for any data loss. And they actually recommend that the data in their cloud is regularly backed up, and that you use a third-party application or service to do so. And I think something has changed here over time, where there was a belief for many clients that if your data is in the cloud, that means it's not just 99% uptime, but you also are completely protected in terms of your data. And I think some of those concepts or ideas were being mixed together. But now we're seeing a greater understanding of, just because the data is in the cloud, sure, you get amazing uptime and you get some guaranteed SLAs around that, but that doesn't mean your data can't be lost or can't be crypto locked, for example. So I think that's a really key area to educate clients and continue to educate clients. So one of the most successful campaigns that we have, I think we have a slide on it a little bit later, highlights to, it's built for MSPs so you can brand it yourself, but sending it out to your end clients and really just educating them on what it means to have the data in the cloud around some key areas of security and compliance. And that's made a really big difference in bringing clients on to, for MSPs, clients on to actually having their data protected and backed up. So Dan, I know that as you go to market, you package everything together. So you're selling complete packages. Do you have to do much work to educate your clients on the need to back up their data in a different cloud? Is that a key part of your go-to-market, or is it pretty clearly understood?
It is very clearly understood, because for our benefit, as much as the clients, we as an MSP will not sign an agreement unless they subscribe to those services. So we kind of game the system a little bit, but we recognize the importance. We have recognized the importance well before anything global has happened like we have seen recently. And our clients have done nothing but really benefit from it. So we actually package our agreements and price them to the point where we can cover the cost associated with backup and disaster recovery, and just have that all bundled in for one nice invoice for the client. So to them, they don't even see the line item, but it is a value add service that we add to our agreements, and that's part of their partnership with us.
Got it.
Yeah, and real quick, one thing I find I actually see my partners find success with, specifically with regards to this, is sometimes they'll actually go to their clients and have some kind of data loss waiver that they'll actually have their clients sign, saying, "Hey, listen, one thing you need to understand is that we are not going to be we're not going to be held liable for any kind of data loss due to Microsoft not protecting that data and storing it for X amount of time." Because one thing I find with my partners specifically is they sometimes find it difficult to convey the importance of getting a third-party backup, because they just, assume that Microsoft does everything, which, as you can see here, is really not the case. So.
Got it. Thanks, David. And as our friend Kevin Mitnick has demonstrated, it is possible to phish and cryptolock Office 365. So that is available. I think we can share the link there, just the video if you haven't seen that already, but that's a good educational tool as well. And we actually recently, I think just over a month ago, did a joint survey with Channel Pro around Office 365 and got a number of questions answered. But one of the key questions that was answered was, why do end users or clients purchase or want to buy Office 365? And the number one answer is security. Number two is compliance. And then Microsoft SLA is actually over 10%. And then combined human error or a malicious employee is about 18%. You can see a quote from one of our partners below from Avagio that highlights just being able to control the partner experience and provide the level of responsiveness is really important to them, so they don't have to depend on Microsoft, who, depending on the situation, is not necessarily as responsive as your SLA will demand for your client. So these are some of the core reasons from an education standpoint that really matter for clients in making sure that their data is protected. So Dan highlighted this in a comment he made earlier, but in that same research that we did with CompTIA, I think what's interesting is that from a growth standpoint, healthcare is not only the largest vertical for service providers or solution providers, but it's also the one that's growing the most. So it's growing, or projected to grow, based on the MSPs that we surveyed, 27% in 2020. And then right after that, actually not that close, after that are technology, manufacturing, and legal, all at about 18%, where they see or expect to grow in 2020. So obviously with regulations like HIPAA, that means that there's a greater requirement around compliance for data retention and data security. And Dan, I know you do support the healthcare industry. Are there any particular areas that you focus on from a continuity or security standpoint with healthcare?
So for when it comes to healthcare and a couple of different industries, compliance is huge, and it's a huge opportunity for MSPs. We like to kind of start the conversation around what their position on HIPAA is, who their compliance officer is, and really what their overall strategy is. And then we actually do our own internal assessment against that. And then, at the end of the conversation, we provide them with the tools they need to not only be compliant, but maintain compliance in the event that they were or ever to be audited. So compliance is a huge opportunity for MSPs, not just from a service providing standpoint, but also an education standpoint, because as we have found, most clients might have a compliance officer on staff, but that could just be the receptionist who's responsible for filling out the paperwork. So a lot of clients really don't always understand the depth and width of what HIPAA compliance or PCI compliance or anything like that really truly means, because it's not just a set of technology to have and say that you're compliant. It's a practice. It's a way to do business. It's a way to train your staff. And as an MSP, even if you're not HIPAA compliant or HIPAA knowledgeable, it's definitely a huge opportunity, because ultimately your clients, if they have an issue, are going to come to you about it anyway. So as we see with the numbers, healthcare being the top and the top expected to grow vertical, not just because we're in a global pandemic related to people's health, but I think it was also a trending vertical even before all of this, as the adaptation of technology just became more and more rampant and moved to the cloud. Compliance became a bit of a different conversation because it's not just on-prem anymore. It's not behind a locked door. It's accessible from anywhere. So you had to maintain a different degree of compliance across the board.
Got it. Thanks, Dan. So in that same survey that we did earlier, one of the big takeaways was that of the managed service providers surveyed, more than 100 in the Channel Pro survey, more than half of those MSPs had only 10% of their Office 365 clients actually being backed up. And you can access that report down there. I think we can post that to the chat as well. But that's something that we feel very strongly about, because our vision is actually to cure data loss, and our mission is to keep business running. And critical to that is to make sure that our partners and our clients have all their data protected no matter what. So as a result of some of that research, we're actually now offering NFR licenses for any MSP organization. So up to 100 NFR licenses for your MSP to make sure all your data is backed up at no charge. And if you'd like to take advantage of that, please feel free to sign up there at that link, which we can also share in the chat. So Axient X360 Cloud, which is formerly known as Cloud Finder and part of our Axient X360 platform of 3 backup services, is really built for MSPs. So our value proposition is that we have one platform, Axient X360, that provides all the backup you need from BCDR, sync and share, and SaaS protection, and it's built for MSPs. So we're 100% channel, and all of our solutions are multi-tenant to make your management a little bit easier. You can see that client status at a glance. We've simplified our pricing. We had more than 1,000 different SKUs. We've taken those down to just 7. And one of the key ways we're able to do that is provide unlimited storage and retention for all those SKUs. And then on top of that, once you become a partner, that's just the beginning of our journey. And we provide key resources to help you onboard your new clients, to help you acquire new clients through enablement and campaigns and ongoing training. So we're really proud to be 100% channel, and really appreciate the partner community that we have and the partners that we have. David, I know this is something that you feel strongly about. Anything else you want to add here in terms of the partners that you support in your region?
Yeah, so I think one common kind of recurring theme that I come across when I speak to my partners is just simplicity, right? It's the ability to have your techs trained up on one thing, able to access everything in one spot, and really, take the time, the effort out of managing your solutions. Because at the end of the day, if you can reduce the time that it takes to manage everything, it's more time that they can be, spending doing other things, working with your clients and things like that. So I think that's one thing that I find I really support, and my partners do as well, is just the simplicity aspect behind the kind of consolidated platform that we have going on here. So
that's what our CEO prioritizes. We've still got work to do, but we've definitely made some progress. So for X360 Cloud, for SaaS protection, we back up email, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. And we're also adding G Suite to that with the Share Drive. They changed it from Team Drive to Share Drive, but we provide unlimited storage and retention for all of that. And we actually don't charge for shared mailboxes or for deleted users. And I know, Dan, when you were looking at the different vendors and selecting the vendors that you wanted to work for Office 365 backup, that sort of archiving capability, not having to be charged for that, was something that mattered to you, right?
That was huge, and that was actually one of the, aside from price, was one of the biggest differentiators for Axient and the X360 Cloud. It made the decision pretty easy. Not only is the interface simple to use and easy to onboard clients into, but the fact that we have unlimited retention of deleted users, and being able to reach back and review that and export it and retrieve it as simply as an active user was huge.
Great, thanks Dan. And we have a question from Todd on when will existing partners be able to take advantage of that new multi-tenant management interface. So that's available for existing partners today. So Todd will reach out to you and take you through how you can take advantage of that new multi-tenant management interface that we provided enhancement to. So we'll reach out to you and take you through that process so you can see all these new capabilities. And one of the, speaking of new features, this is coming out later this month. So this is the standard UX where you can see from a calendar standpoint if any days have any issues with any backups, but we've added a different level of detail where you can holistically look at, are you in compliance? For example, you may have compliance requirements of doing a full backup, make sure you're completely synced once every 24 hours for all your clients. So you can look at that from a compliance standpoint, but you can also see, for example, if from an SLA standpoint, if you want to do 3 backups per day, were you able to do 3 backups within that 24-hour period? And if not, why not? And being able to troubleshoot that with a little bit more clarity. So adding a little bit more depth and reporting clarity on compliance versus actual in-depth reporting is coming out later this month. So we're excited to add that enhancement. One of the other areas that we focus on is our smart search. So that's based on technology called Elasticsearch. So we can actually do a full text search across all services and all users, and even look inside of attachments up to 100 meg and do more than 100 million objects in less than 5 seconds. So we have a really powerful and flexible search capability so that you can search and restore any one item, or you can actually restore a complete mailbox and do a non-destructive restore to another user's mailbox, or you can actually export that data as well. All right, our second poll, this is a tough one. We did this earlier and not easy to pick just one, but when you look at what you care about for Office 365 backup and selecting a vendor, what would you prioritize over everything else if you could just pick one thing? Would it be price? Would it be ease of use? Would it be features? Or the fact that the vendor you're working with is channel only or 100% channel? And Dan, while we have our audience answering that question, something that you're working on in this shift from more project-based services or on-prem services to cloud services is the value that you add versus the vendor. So obviously, Microsoft has B2C or direct type offerings like Teams. So when you're offering something like that has that end user purchase capability with Microsoft, how do you look at providing value around the Microsoft ecosystem? What are some of the things you think about?
So the thing we have working to our advantage is that it's a pretty complex system. To have someone get to a configuration level that is usable and they're leveraging everything they're paying for, it would be nearly impossible. So for us, it's an ease of adoption. Microsoft makes a lot of their products available to the end user directly because they want people to adopt it. They want people to use it, and they want people to really leverage it and forget about what life was like before it. So that's why a lot of the features of Teams that we see are, by default enabled and open to end users to create new channels, to create teams, to create groups, because Microsoft really wants people to leverage it. And as an MSP, that's a bit of a nightmare. So we like to tread lightly when it comes to really encouraging clients and end users to actually doing those types of things. So what we do instead is we really focus on the education aspect, and we really focus on what does successfully using this platform really look like to this particular client, and trying to get ahead of their curiosity, so to speak, and really pointing them in the right direction of here's your path to adaptation, and here's how to efficiently integrate it into your workflow. And so we try to engage them at that level first, rather than discouraging them from using different things or exploring or trying new things. We definitely encourage it, but we try to do it in the realm of let's take these 5 steps first, and then we can discuss what next looks like.
Got it. All right, so we have our results here, and interestingly, features is what matters most. So again, most folks replied here. So features, 60%, and then ease of use at 25%, then price, then channel only. And I can't remember your answer last time, Dan, but what did you care about the most? I think it was ease of use. Is that right? Or you picked two, didn't you?
I did. I cheated. Ease of use and features were definitely top of the list, and mostly because as the CTO, I'm feature hungry. I want to be sure that what we're getting, we can leverage the most efficiently out of everything else. But ease of use is really important for service delivery. You know, when you're talking about your professional services versus your managed services and those different lines of businesses, they have different approaches to how to effectively use the tools that you're paying for. So features from a professional services standpoint and actually being able to implement things is huge. But from a service side of things, ease of use is definitely top of the list because they need to be able to recover quickly and finish out that ticket as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. So both price and ease of use actually contribute to your total cost of ownership, right? And your overall gross margin and profitability. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we feel very strongly about our vision and mission. So at Axion, our vision is to cure data loss, and our mission is to keep business running no matter what's happening from any kind of attack or human error or natural disaster. And we do that through our platform, Axion X360, one platform for MSPs to protect everything. And we have these three services, X360 Sync, previously called Axion Anchor for secure sync and share, Axion X360 Cloud, previously Cloud Finder for cloud-to-cloud or SaaS protection, and X360 Recover, which is a convergence of our BDR offerings, including Ruffle.BRC and Fusion, bringing together the best RPO and RTO for our partners. And by the end of this quarter, we're already pretty close. This is the portal that we launched, an update to our portal that we launched just a couple of weeks ago, where we have this refreshed look and feel. We have this consistent UX. So you have a single sign-on with SSO, you have MFA, and as Dan mentioned earlier, it's really important to have that ease of use from an SSO standpoint, and having that consistent UX through the different products, that consistent look and feel. So we, by the end of this quarter, we will have SSO support, not just for X360 Cloud, which we have for today, so for Microsoft 365 backup, but for our BCDR product, X360 Recover, and our secure sync and share product, X360 Sync. So having that consistent UX and that consistent SSO and consistent MFA profile across three core backup services really, from our position, helps our partners really reduce that operational overhead and make sure that their techs can be really efficient. And that extends not just to the management of the products, but also to, as you see on the left, support, billing, training. You can take advantage of online training and certification or schedule free instructor-led training. We have a dedicated team for that. And then also a marketing portal, which has SSO support today and has pre-built campaigns and assets for you to run for Office 365 backup. And we have a dedicated partner success team that helps you not only with the adoption of your products, but also to help you run these campaigns to add new clients. And one of the key reasons to run those campaigns to add new clients is to help you provide that bundled solution, that complete cloud experience for productivity around Microsoft 365 by including that backup, and also as a byproduct of that, not only making sure your clients are fully protected from security and human error, and that you have that level of service level agreement that you really care about, but you can also manage your margins a little bit better and support an overall gross margin that's healthier for your business. With that, we're to our last poll, which is how do you sell Office 365 backup? So questions here, you're not selling it yet, it's a separate line item, or it's bundled. And as you heard from Dan earlier, from CardTech go-to-market standpoint, it's just an included offering. In fact, CardTech does not bring on a client unless they agree to have business continuity and backup included in their overall offering, which makes it easier from a liability standpoint for Dan, but also makes it easier for Dan because he can be consistent in the offering that you're providing, and you have some standard operating procedures that can reduce your overhead and increase your efficiency, right?
That's absolutely correct.
Interesting breakout here. We've got almost 50% that's not selling yet. So we'd like to get you selling and making a little bit more money and protecting your data. So feel free to fill out the NFR form or get a trial or a demo from us, and we like to show off our solution. About 30% are saying it's a separate line item, and almost 25% say you're offering a bundled solution today. So a little bit of a mix on that question, which is always interesting. So just a few more slides here. This slide highlights the marketing portal from that portal that we just talked about with the brandable assets and campaigns that you can run. And an example of this is a partner actually in Scotland, and he feels like it's a win-win in terms of providing Office 365 backup to make sure that their data is being fully protected, but also it's another revenue stream and additional margin for him. In fact, he signed on with us with just 35 licenses, but within a month, he was actually up to 800 licenses, and that was just through running one campaign. Through running one campaign to his existing Office 365 clients, based on what we had in the marketing portal, he was able to sign up 25% of his clients within those 30 days. So pretty awesome return right there just from educating his clients on the need for data protection. So we definitely feel this is a key opportunity for our partners and MSPs in general as they migrate more to cloud services. And this is just a highlight of the campaigns that we have in the marketing portal. We keep it really simple. So for each of the services, we have 2 campaigns, one for Cloud Finder, 2 for Cloud Finder X360 Cloud, the ones that have the highest performance. We continue to iterate on these. Actually, we're about to do a refresh on these campaigns. The Cloud Finder or X360 Cloud Office 365 backup campaigns work really well today, but just updating a few things, including the name. So with that, a few key takeaways. Hope that you've enjoyed or seen value from what we presented today. But there's absolutely a cloud opportunity, even in what we're dealing with today, as we've seen from the research and, in fact, your own answers. And there's definitely an opportunity to attach backup to all those cloud services that you're selling to ensure that your clients are protected with a second cloud option, and also that you can add a little bit more revenue and margin as well. And of course, we've built our platform to support you to do that, not just by managing a very effective gross margin and total cost of ownership, but having the support overall to help you add new clients and adopt our products through partner marketing and partner success. So Dan, any last takeaways you'd like to leave with our audience, or any key learnings from how you built your business and focused on cloud services overall?
Ooh, loaded question. I love it. For us, focusing on backup and disaster recovery really as a cornerstone of our offering, and letting clients know just how important having that in place is, just from a business continuity perspective. You know, we're not in a scenario anymore of if the next pandemic happens. You know, it's almost a matter of when. And we've been through it once. We know where we need to kind of tighten things up. We know where we're lacking, and now is an opportunity to just make things more efficient. And having a good business continuity plan is key. And backup and disaster recovery and SaaS protection are huge cornerstones of that. So if you're not planning for the future and you don't have a plan for when everything hits the fan, now is the time to do it, so that way next time you are ready.
Great. Thanks, Dan. And Olivia, I think you have a gift card to give away. Is that true?
Yes, so we have a $100 Amazon gift card to give out. And so the winner for today is Todd Messner. So congratulations, Todd. I'll make sure to send that over to you today. And as for our entire audience that was here today and participated with us, everyone will be receiving their $25 Uber Eats card. Those are sent out individually, so please just be patient, but we'll make sure to get those to you no later than tomorrow morning.
Great. And I think we just have one more question here from Joe, so I'll answer that quickly. Have the price and features changed much with the new product names and fewer SKUs? So we now have 4 SKUs for our BCDR product, Repabit or BRC, now called Recover, 2 for Anchor, or now X360 Sync, and 1 for Cloud Finder X360 Cloud. So in some cases, the prices might be a little bit lower. Prices did not go up for sure. And also, we consolidated features to make it simpler. So, for example, with Anchor or X360 Sync, sometimes there were separately priced features. Now you just get everything in that those two part numbers, one for cloud, private cloud, and one for using our cloud. So it was all about just how to make it simpler to manage and to build and for partners to use. But with that, I think we have all the questions. So thanks again for taking the time today to listen about the opportunity for Office 365. And Dan, thanks again for all your insight and taking the time here. Talk to you next time.
Thanks, everyone.